second, then the system's on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. We're going to get started in just 2 minutes. So go ahead, grab some food, grab a drink, and grab a seat, please. We'll get started in about 2 minutes. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's try it again. Good afternoon, class. All right. You know, we're trying to do something hip and Silicon Valley-ish, but this is still about education. Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Petrilli. I'm the president of the Thomas B. Fordham Institute, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our first ever Moonshot for Kids competition being held in partnership with our great friends at the Center for American Progress. We are so appreciative of everyone that is here, of the finalists, many of whom traveled a long way, one of whom traveled just 1 block, it sounds like, from his home. So that's pretty impressive. And likewise to our wonderful judges who also traveled and had to do a ton of homework because in advance of this, our finalists all wrote papers. I think they were, 2,500 words each about their proposals. These are, so times 10, that was a lot of homework for our judges to do, and we appreciate you being here. We are going to dive in very quickly after just a few introductions. I'm going to pass it off to Ulrich Bozer from CAP to say a few words as well. But just to say, this is part of a year-long project that we are doing with CAP to look at the question of how we can do a better job with research and development in education. As a lot of us know, the research enterprise in education has improved dramatically in the last couple of decades. You know, those of us on the older side can remember when education research was not looked at with a lot of respect, and that, on the whole, we didn't really know much about what was working and what didn't, because we didn't have the kind of evidence. But thanks to the great work of folks who started the Institute for Education Sciences, funding from Congress over the years, and a lot of great work in the research community, as well as the fact that we have these great data systems now. Thank you, standardized testing. We know a lot more about what works than we did 20 years ago. But I think we would argue that the D side of the R&D equation still does not have a great amount of investment in it. And anytime you look at how development investments look in education compared to other sectors, it's tiny. And of course, part of the challenge is we've got this very fragmented, decentralized system where it's hard to get 13,000 districts to each pony up for any kind of development investment. So what we want to do with this Moonshot for Kids competition is to illustrate the kinds of projects that could be funded if we had a serious either federal or maybe philanthropic or maybe state or some combination of all of the above tool to invest in this kind of thing. And the kinds of tools and technology, curriculum, programs that could really have an impact in this enormous country of ours. That's a big challenge. You know, how do you think about scaling something that could have an impact on millions of kids, especially given how decentralized our system is? So our hope is to make that real today. You're going to hear some fantastic ideas about what people would do if they had $1 billion to invest in their idea and to scale up their idea. And we've got a great panel of judges that's going to ask them some questions and push back on them, I'm sure, about whether or not these ideas make sense and whether they could be really applicable in the classroom. Okay, so with that, let me first invite Ulrich Bozer up to the stage to say a few words. Oh, there he is. Ulrich?
Thanks so much, Mike, and thank you all for coming here. Really grateful. Also want to thank Schmidt Futures, who supported this work, and Kumar Garg, who is a senior director for technology and society at Schmidt Futures, really helped us conceive of this work and execute it. I want to make two really quick points. One is that this really was a bipartisan effort. It's rare in these times, and I want to make very clear that we disagree with Fordham on a number of education policy issues. Vouchers, gifted and talented programs, many other charter schools. The list grows long. But on this issue of having a large investment in education development that is really going to be a moonshot that will create these types of programs, technologies, and tools that our kids really need is something that we see very much eye to eye on. The second thing that I wanted to underscore was just how important it is to take these steps. As many of you know, and in this room I can say, the NAEP results that were released recently really underscore the value and the need for this type of work. As you've probably read, the scores were static. In some areas, those scores dropped. And I think it really shows us that we need to take some much more dramatic steps forward, that we need a moonshot to really spark the type of change that we need. As part of this project, we set some ambitious goals. We think that's where a project like this would really need to start. And Mike is going to start moderating with the first panel. And I think even before we jump into that, we'll introduce our judges. Mark Cuban is not up here, but we have some other really prominent guests.
All right. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ulrich. Okay, so let's introduce our judges today. We'll do this alphabetically. First up, Sarah Allen. Sarah, say hello. Hello, hello. Sarah's, let's see, the title is Strategy Leadership for K-12 Education at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Excellent. Next up, Kumar Garg. Kumar, say hello. You've heard Ulrich mention Kumar already. He is the Senior Director for Technology and Society at Schmidt Futures. Note this, Gates, Schmidt, familiar names. You guys could just do this on your own, right? And that is, of course, our hope. Okay. Next up, we have Takeru Nagayoshi. Takeru, hello. Takeru is an AP English teacher at New Bedford High School in Massachusetts. So grateful to have you here. Our teachers had to leave their students behind, and that is no small thing. But it is essential to get the teacher perspective here if we are going to talk about R&D for things that are going to happen in our schools. So thank you so much for being here, Takeru. Next up, Lisette Gonzales Reynolds. Lisette, hello. Lisette is Vice President of Policy at the Foundation for Excellence in Education. And thank you for coming a long way from Texas and the week before Jeb Fest at that. So that is amazing. Little plug in there for Jeb Fest. And finally, Michael Simon. Michael, welcome. Another teacher on the panel, he teaches U.S. history at the Intech Academy in New York City. And we were talking earlier, just getting tremendous results with his kids around U.S. history. So exciting. So that is our panel. And now let me introduce our first contestant. I will say this, so it's going to be super fast. We want these folks to give their 3-minute, maybe 4-minute pitch, and then we're going to have 3 and 4 minutes of conversation with the judges. We're going to try to keep that on time today, super fast. So first up is Anna Utgoff from Bibliomatic. Anna, take it away.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? So I am here today to propose an investment in speech recognition technology that's trained to help kids learn how to read. And I talked in detail in my proposal about how this might work. What I want to talk about today is why I think it's important. And the why for me really starts with my own daughter. When she was about 6 years old, we noticed that reading was hard for her. The correspondence between letters on the page and English sounds and words, it just wasn't sticking. And that happens to a lot of kids. It just doesn't click. So we did what her teachers recommended, and we sat with her every night and helped her practice reading aloud. She would read the words on the page, and when she got to something she couldn't decode, we would stop her and help her figure out how to do it. And the research says that's exactly the kind of practice that young readers need, especially struggling readers. They need to read aloud with a listener who's paying close attention to them so that that listener can stop them and help them fix any mistakes they make. That way they're practicing and encoding the right letter-sound correspondences. So as I sat next to my daughter every night and listened to her read aloud, I started to wonder, why aren't there apps that can help her get more of this kind of practice? I work in tech, so I know speech recognition has gotten insanely good. My phone can listen to what I'm saying and transcribe it more accurately than any human in this room. And that's what my daughter needed. She needed somebody to listen to her closely and respond with the information she needed when she made a mistake. So I sat there and wondered, why aren't there a ton of apps that use speech recognition to help kids read aloud? And I looked into it, and I can tell you I am not the first person to have this idea. In fact, people in the reading and speech science world have been trying to make this work for about 2 decades now. And the reason that it is not a thing that you see everywhere is that the technology is not quite there yet. You can't just take best-in-class technology that's designed for adults and use it with early readers. Alexa and Siri, for example, were trained on adult voices. Kids have shorter vocal cords, they speak at higher frequencies, you need to train on their voices. Alexa and Siri try to ignore it when you make a mistake and figure out what you meant to say. With kids, you have to catch those mistakes and respond to them because that's where the real learning happens. So that's the bad news, is the technology that we have today is not fit for purpose for helping kids learn to read. But there's good news too, and that's that we can fix this. Government and public investment was essential to getting adult speech recognition to the point where it is today. If we make the same investment in speech recognition that's trained for early readers, we can have a transformative impact on the number of kids who are reading fluently by the end of 3rd grade. And that's incredibly important. My daughter, I am happy to say, is a great reader now. She turned 8 yesterday, and she just recently got to the point where she will pick up a book and read for fun. If my math is correct, it took her about 1,000 hours of practice, reading aloud to me and her dad and her teachers and the tutors that we hired for her. Every kid in America who is learning how to read deserves that kind of practice with a listener who can give them the feedback that they need. If we invest in speech recognition that's designed for early readers, we can give them that kind of practice. Thank you.
Wow, you set a high bar.
3 minutes is not long.
That was incredibly well done. All right, and I should have said at the beginning that the way we are grouping these is the first few are focused on our first Moonshot goal. We put a couple of Moonshot goals out there and asked for everybody to write towards them and to aim towards them. This one is to reduce by half the number of 4th graders reading below the basic level. Clearly, this one's right on target. So, judges, take it away. Who wants to go first? Who's got a question for Anna about the speech recognition approach? Yes, Michael. Grab a...
I'll use my teaching.
No. We need it for the camera, yeah.
Hello? Yes. Okay. It's a 2-part question. How do you get parents motivated to get involved? Also, how do you incorporate speech recognition more in the classroom for students and teachers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think motivating parents and families to get involved, the right way to think about that is to think about yourself as competing for time with things like Candy Crush and Fortnite and other fun things that kids do with technology. If you can make learning to read as fun as those things, then it will be very easy to compete with adults and families and kids. And then to your question about how do you make it work in classrooms, I think that is about making the technology a lot more robust, because right now it's very hard to use speech recognition in a classroom setting because there's a lot of background noise, right? It makes it harder for the computer to understand what the kid is saying. But I think once you get over that hurdle, then this is going to be a really good candidate for small group intervention, where a group of kids who need to practice a particular decoding skill can go practice with an app or with a computer that can give them feedback within a classroom setting. Does that answer your question?
Okay, who's next, judges? Yes, Kumar.
Can you hear me? Okay. So what would be a good milestone that you'd want to sort of set? So, hey, if we can get currently the state of the technologies here and how many words it can pick up for an early reader, and the right sort of challenge for the research community is, can we get the algorithms to this much sort of accuracy? Because then it will sort of take off. Do you have sort of a sense of, so DARPA's first autonomous challenge was, can you make it across this obstacle course?
Right.
And basically no one did it the first time, but they ran it every year for 10 years, and eventually autonomous cars started to make it through the obstacle course, and that's when Google and others sort of started to run with the technology. What would be your sense of the right milestone?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you're right that it will take a while. With speech recognition for adults, the natural obstacle to try to go over is more accurate than humans. With kids, I think the natural line that you're going to want to try to cross is not infuriating for small children to play, right? So like kids get real mad when a game is listening to them and misinterprets what they're saying. So you have to get speech recognition to the point that small children will not quit in fury. And I don't know exactly what the number is, but it's pretty high.
So I didn't really hear too much about equity in your proposal, and there's a lot of discussion around bias in coding in tech, especially around race and gender. I was wondering what your proposal is doing to address some of those concerns.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think there are two equity components to my proposal. One is that it makes the kind of support that kids get through tutoring a lot more affordable for families that can't afford the tutors that my daughter got. And two is I think we need to be very purposeful about collecting voice data from across different communities in the United States. Like one of the problems with Alexei in Syria is that they're really good at understanding white men, and they're not as good at understanding me, and that's because the data set they worked with was primarily white men. We need to be much more purposeful when we collect training data that's going to be used to train algorithms used for instruction. So we need, kids who are not primarily English speakers, kids with speech disabilities, like kids from different regions of the United States. I totally agree. Equity is hugely important when you're training machine learning algorithms.
All right, that is all the time we've got. Please join me in thanking Anna. Great job. All right, next up we have Ginger Young from Book Harvest. And Ginger and judges, everybody really hold these microphones close to your mouth. They're super sensitive, and our folks watching at home want to be able to hear. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here today. I think everybody in this room wants us to see a big increase in the number of kids reading on grade level in 4th grade. Is that right? Here's where it starts. It starts with a bedtime story, and it starts as soon as a baby comes home from the hospital. If you don't know why that is, let me tell you that the neurons start firing from day one. In fact, a stunning 90% of the brain is developed by the age of 5. That gives us a spectacular window of opportunity to lay the foundation for a lifetime of literacy and learning, one that we can never get back later. Because the neurons start firing on that very day, that's when we have to get to work. But here's the thing. Right now, 6.6 million American children are growing up in low-income homes who are not able to get this opportunity. They don't have this foundation. They don't have the ability to get to 4th grade reading proficiently. That's 4 out of every 5 kids in this group, and that is not okay. My Moonshot idea aims to turn that around. It's simple, it's transformative, and it's happening in my hometown of Durham, North Carolina right now with an organization I founded called Book Harvest. We have provided 1.3 million books to children since we started, and we're just getting started. My Moonshot idea is called Book Babies. It's a program that lays a language-rich literacy foundation that starts at birth and continues for 5 full years for Medicaid-eligible children. Here's how it works. Our trained Book Harvest staff members visit families in their homes, meeting them where they are, with a portfolio of support from the time a baby is born until it is time for kindergarten. Over the course of those 5 years, children and their families receive 11 literacy coaching home visits to help parents create the kind of rich pathways and nutrition that their babies' developing brains need, and they receive more than 120 brand new books. Bedtime stories become the norm. Children's imaginations and vocabularies flourish, and parents' confidence in their role as their baby's first and best brain builder grows. It's spectacular to watch. When our book babies do graduate from the program and go on to school, they've got the rocket fuel that they need to be ready to learn to read and to stay on grade level. Book Babies has the potential to scale, and we're proving that potential with a 5-year randomized controlled trial evaluation with our partners at High Scope Educational Research Foundation, the country's leading research organization on early childhood. You may know them from the work they did with the landmark Perry Preschool Study. Together, we are looking at 5 indicators of measures that are keys to reading: language and communications, book sharing strategies, receptive language, print knowledge and phonological awareness, and of course, school readiness. Our early results already show enormous promise, and we're on the road to having the evidence we need to make Book Babies the standard of care for every child in our country starting at birth. And here's one more thing. My Moonshot idea is the key to making every other wonderful idea you're hearing here today achievable. Without moving the starting line to birth, without building the fundamental foundation on which everything else rests, and yes, starting with books and bedtime stories and working with parents, all the others, unfortunately, will not be able to realize their full potential. Starting at birth and investing in brains for the first 5 years, that's what we're about, and we're ready to do this work at scale. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Ginger. Okay, let's get started with Sarah.
Thank you very much, Ginger. That was a great job. So it's a compelling idea, but it sounds really expensive. It sounds labor intensive. It sounds like you got to buy a lot of books. Can you talk a little bit more about the business model? Are you thinking about piggybacking on any other kind of like infrastructure that's already in place to get people into parents' homes?
Great question. We are experimenting with different ideas all the time, and we hope to have a lot of chances to demo different approaches in the next 5 years. Right now, it costs us $5,000 per family over 5 years to deliver the entire intervention and get them to kindergarten. I would suggest a couple of things. That is a lot less expensive than the catch-up and remediation that we are doing with children in school who are not ready to read. It costs about half of what it costs to have 1.5 year, 6 months of high-quality pre-K. Do we think that we can bring that cost down? I do. My staff today was on a webinar that the Campaign for Good Level Reading ran this afternoon. It's going on right now, in fact, about virtual home visiting. We work with our parents all the time, sending them text messages with tips on reading. I believe there's lots of ways we can integrate some of the face-to-face trust-building home visits with other platforms and other supports that create the same ecosystem of support and brain building and information and tools that we currently have with the wonderful home visits that take place. We don't have all the answers yet. We know what the pure form of the series of home visits looks like. I think we can innovate around other approaches that may be better for some parents.
I was on mute. Okay. So I love this only because we did something similar at the federal level with the WIC program.
Yeah.
So we created a series of books, a series of like I guess, parent, here's what you do with your baby, you know, all the way up to age 1. But it never really took hold, and this was specific to the WIC program. So I'm again, and then I'm thinking about the scalability piece of this.
Sure.
The home visits piece, I think, is also can be somewhat concerning because you're going to you said virtual, but you're also going into people's homes. That tends to not be as scalable unless you have partnerships with other agencies. Are you looking at working with other state agencies that deliver programs that can open the door a little bit more to allowing this to happen? And then I think so. One of the things that I struggle with when we talk about
Actually, let's go ahead and let her to answer that one. Yeah.
So I think everything we do is in partnership. We have wonderful referrals from Family Connects Durham, which is a group that's recently gone national. We work very closely with them. They were founded 10 minutes from us and helped me architect Book Babies in 2012. We work closely with Reach Out and Read. We work closely with our county library and with our state organizations that are doing work on literacy. I don't think we yet know where the scaling could take place and what the essential frameworks may be. I actually think that home visiting is the great untapped superpower that all of us have neglected. We had a landscape analysis done in our state of how many families could benefit from home visiting in the early years versus how many were getting it. 1% of the families who were identified as needing some aspect of what home visiting could deliver were actually receiving it. I think we've underexploited that as a tool. There is nothing like going into someone's home and sitting on their living room couch with them and being in a place where they feel comfortable to deliver an intervention, whether it's literacy or something else, that can create the trust to do the collaborative relationship that gives the parents the support they need. So I don't think that will ever be something that should be removed from the equations. And every time I think about how challenging it is, I look at our attrition rate. Our retention rate is 78%. That's spectacular. We work really hard to make sure we keep up with families. It can be done. It's all about the human relationship, and the one word that always comes to mind is trust. And I do know that there are a lot of discussions we have yet to have with partners in this field about how we can work together to deliver this 5 years of nutrition that all families need toward kindergarten readiness.
All right. Thank you, Ginger.
Thank you.
Wonderful job. Again, Ginger Young with Book Harvest. Okay. Up next, our last one on the 4th grade reading challenge here, Tom Newmark, the founder of the Frederick Classical Charter School. Come on up, Tom. There you are.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I talk about my reading proposal called Project Mars, I thought I would make everyone here into a professional tennis player. We have 8 minutes, so why not? So here's the big secret. All you have to do, go to a store, buy the same racket that a professional tennis player uses, and you'll be on the pro tour. Could I see the hands of everyone who thinks that that is a realistic way to become a professional? Nope, nobody? All right. Well, teaching is a lot like that. It's a lot like tennis. Instead of asking you to invest primarily in technology, I'm asking you to invest primarily in teachers' knowledge. Teachers have to be smarter than the tools they use, but unfortunately, research has shown that teachers and even education professors lack knowledge of scientifically based reading instruction. What kind of knowledge, you might ask? Well, here's an easy question. This is your chance to participate. On your left hand, please hold up the number of sounds in the word exit. That's E-X-I-T. So in your left hand, the number of sounds in the word exit. I don't see no hands going up. All right, a couple. And on your right hand, the number of sounds in the word sing. That's S-I-N-G. Keep your hands up. All right, so keep your hands up now if you have this. Do you have 5 on your left hand and 3 on your right? Put your hands down if you don't. Most people didn't. That's the easy question. Did someone get it? Nobody got it. All right. So, oh, you did? All right, we got one person who got it. Of course it would be you, of course. All right. So that question was based on a test we gave applicants to the Frederick Classical Charter School. That question was based on a test we gave applicants to the Frederick Classical Charter School. Other questions included things like, name the 4 parts of the brain responsible for reading. How many vowel sounds does English have? It's not 6. What is the likely reason a 3rd grader misspells the word real as wall? What is a voiceless, unaspirated velar sound? What is morphophonemic orthography? and why should teachers know this, and many more. We know how to teach nearly every child to read, but doing so requires teachers to spend about 2 years acquiring this knowledge. It's a lot of effort, but it's the only proven and realistic way we know to help the bottom 40% of students who struggle. Our country has struggled for 130 years to teach reading well, and it affects all other subjects. So investing in this area will have a large impact. Project Mars, what I'm proposing, is the most comprehensive proposal of all those in the reading category because it addresses all 5 components of scientifically based reading instruction, fills the gaps in teacher knowledge, and provides curricular support. It provides financial incentives for all participants. It invites many curriculum publishers to participate, which should appeal to Congress and other philanthropists who may be reluctant to invest up to $1 billion in a singular solution by a single organization. If you're looking for a more speculative investment, mine is not the one to pick. But if you want a proven way to help today's children, Project Mars focuses on the most critical area of education, has the most research support of any proposal, connects the dots from research to the goal of having the below basic rate in reading, and will help transform education from a belief-based profession into an evidence-based one. So who wants to launch Project Mars with me?
Okay, thank you. All right, Tom, let me ask one quick question just for the folks who have not seen your proposal. Tell us a little bit more. What is Project Mars? What is it in very concrete terms?
Sure. It is a study that asks curriculum publishers to put forward scientifically based reading materials, and it combines that with teacher training. Most of the investment would actually be in teacher training, and it's a long-term longitudinal study with trying to have control groups and all that. And so it's supposed to promote and attract teachers to the science of reading and also help curriculum publishers improve their offerings through this research that will help them see where their offerings are strong or weak.
Okay, judges, who wants to go first? Okay, yes.
Hi. So I did note in your proposal that there was a lot of literature around the science behind literacy mentioned. But when it comes to the roadblocks of why our students have difficult times reading, there are oftentimes cultural and sociological factors as well. And I feel like you didn't attend to that. Why is that?
So because the research is really clear that students have different brains, and regardless of their cultural context, if you're born with a phonological processing difficulty, it doesn't matter what your culture is, what your socioeconomic circumstances are. You can be a wealthy kid, and if you have dyslexia, you're going to struggle. And so the solution I'm proposing is it doesn't require attending to any cultural differences in that way. It's focusing more on what research shows, which is that there are ways to help kids that are struggling in reading that have nothing to do with that. Now, this isn't to deny that there are differences, there are risk factors. If you are in a low-income area, if your parents are not as well educated, it's absolutely true. That is a risk factor. It is the biggest risk factor for kids that are in low-income families in low-income schools where most of the kids are like that, but it varies a lot. And so basically the reason why I wasn't focusing on that is that is the trickiest trick of all, is to address that issue. But there's a lot we can do with what the science says, and so I chose to focus on the things that we had more proven solutions for.
Can you say more about the teacher training component? I mean, we all have died on many professional development hills in trying to do that well and to try to do it at scale at a cost that's reasonable. So say more about what the teacher training model looks like and why you think it's feasible and scalable for most school districts.
Sure. So the training that we use at the Frederick Classical Charter School, and you don't have to choose this one, there are other options, was the Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading, LETRS, L-E-T-R-S, developed by Louisa Moats, a very well-regarded program. And it is scalable because what you get with this is there are 12 nationally certified LETRS trainers if you went down this route, and then there are actually locally and regionally certified trainers. And the idea is that once you train teachers for the first 2 years, that you can start to transition. You'll identify people in your school building who actually can become the trainers. And so then you can have the national experts move on to other sites, and eventually you'll get the curricular support you need.
Yeah, so as a state, we actually did this in Texas, starting with kindergarten teachers, training them on the science of learning, then the next year, first year, third year. But then when the money ran out, then we just, and as the recent NAEP scores showed, you know, it's not working anymore. So how is this actually going to make change across the country? Like, Can we afford to wait this long? I mean, it just seems like we're just kind of repeating the same thing over and over again, and we're not really getting there yet.
I agree with you. I mean, I don't know that we can make a claim that it's going to be this revolutionary thing. The best that we can do is try to continue to train more teachers in this method and give them support. And eventually, the hope is, and it's a hope, I share your cynicism, that enough teachers will realize that this really does work. It becomes the norm. The issue is, quite frankly, education, schools are not training teachers in this. If that became the way that we train teachers, much like the Flexner report that came out for doctors, if we started training teachers like we train doctors based in science, that would go a long way. But this is an attempt to do this in a different way, but I agree. I can't promise you it's going to work. I share the cynicism, but I also share the hope that when more people get turned on to this, they do come to appreciate what it does for kids.
All right, thank you. Tom Newmark and his Project Mars. All right. I love that those three reading approaches were all so different, which make it really fun. All right, well, now we are moving on up. We're moving on up to middle school, and the next Moonshot goal is to double the number of 8th graders who can write a persuasive essay. And the first contestant to attack that goal is Michelle Brown from Common Lit. Please welcome Michelle.
Can y'all hear me? My name is Michelle Brown, and I run Common Lit, a free online reading program that has reached 13 million students in 2/3 of American public schools. According to the most recent NAEP data, only about a quarter of 8th graders can write an effective, persuasive essay. This is terrible. We are going to double this number, and we're going to do it in the next 5 years. Here's how we're going to do it. First, we are going to build and release a comprehensive, free, and open curriculum for grades 3 to 8. The curriculum will build student essential background knowledge and help them gain a sense of expertise on topics that cut across science and literature and history. Knowing something about the world is the cornerstone of effective writing and thinking and communicating. Second, we're going to build this curriculum on a platform that nudges teachers to use research-based instructional best practices in adolescent literacy. These are practices that have been proven over and over and over again in peer-reviewed journals to make a difference for kids. Practices like teach academic vocabulary, or ask text-dependent questions during reading, or give students specific feedback on their written work, and foster a language-rich classroom environment. Third, the average American middle schooler writes for 5 minutes per class period. We are going to triple this for students who use Common Lit's curriculum. Because we serve 13 million students today, this is going to have a huge effect. Our intervention will add about 1.8 billion hours of grade-level writing practice to the American public education system per year. So why is Common Lit able to do this? First, we're a tech company. We have a world-class engineering team, and we have about 1 billion rows of data on student academic performance in reading and writing that is a gold mine for research and development. Second, we build things iteratively in partnerships with schools and districts. This isn't 1994, where we sit in our office and we write a curriculum and then we print 1 million copies. Our curriculum is a living thing with built-in processes for continuous improvement. Because we have so many teachers and students using our platform, we can do things like run a short cycle randomized control trial experiment or field test an item set in a day. And by the way, half of our engineering and data science team are women. We're doing things differently and better. Last, we already started the work. We have a platform. It's super robust and scalable. And we've already started building the curriculum. It's being piloted in 40 schools today. Our Net Promoter Score is a 9.5 out of 10. One student wrote to us and said, the highest compliment, this Common Lit stuff is legit.
All right. Common Lit is legit. Use that. That's good. Okay, judges, let's hop right in. Who's going to go first? Keep in mind, we've got a middle school teacher here. We're getting.
I just have a question.
All right, let's.
So is this a research project? Okay, I
No.
got confused on that.
Yeah. So Common Lit is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're based in DC and Eastern Market. And our primary thing that we do is we operate commonlit.org, which we've built over 2 Department of Education federal grants under a program called Innovative Approaches to Literacy. And under those, in the past 5 years, we've grown to serve a crazy number of kids.
How you doing? I teach 8th grade U.S. history, and I also prep students for the Regents exam in New York City. My thing is, I have, my principal asked me to have students to take the U.S. Regents in 8th grade, even though that's an 11th grade exam. So these 13-year-old students, he said at giving me full autonomy, is telling me how many students do you want to sit for that exam. So I usually sit about 70 to 80 students with an 85% passing rate. The thing about it is a lot of these students aren't ready to take that type of exam with the writing short response essays. How do you bring that into the classroom, or the strategies or the skills necessary for those students to be successful or feel confident enough to be able to write and to take these type of exams that's needed?
Yeah, so what we know about the research on effective writing instruction is that you need to build it over time, and you need to build student background knowledge, and they need to have lots of vocabulary, lots of language, and they need to know stuff about the world. Like I just looked at a recent persuasive writing prompt on the SAT, and it's, do you think, or like write a proposal arguing on whether we should rethink AI in America. It's like you really need to know something about like the Turing test or automation. And so our curriculum, that's why in my proposal I wrote that the curriculum would be for not just reading class, but it would include those types of best practices in science class, history class, and English, so that students are getting more writing practice and more inputs across the day.
One question I would have is the right analogy the Human Genome Project, which is something where part of a good chunk of how you would meet the goal is new innovations you haven't thought of yet. Like, hey, we've got a lot of data. Folks in the research community are going to be able to find new insights that are not yet best practices, but they're going to figure those out over a certain period of time? Or how much is this, most of the proposal is about taking what we know and getting to wider scale and wider use?
It's mostly about curriculum. So curriculum is the key lever because it defines the interactions between teachers and students every day at every minute of the class. And so our curriculum, through the choice architecture of it, through the questions, through everything, every activity, will have those best practices that we know work embedded in them. So it's actually educative for teachers.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Great job. Too bad my colleague Robert Pendicio was not one of the judges when she said it's about curriculum. I think he just voted yes on that one. Okay, our last one in this category around persuasive writing in 8th grade is Ogden Morse from Fine Tune. Come on up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The poet, author, and scholar Archibald MacLeish once wrote that the business of education at its highest possible level is the relation of students to their lives. Those are words that hung on my classroom wall for many years, and I think it's a larger purpose that all of us in this room share. I mention it with respect to writing because I think it underscores the lesser known but arguably even greater importance of writing. Every day students are learning, hopefully, in the classroom, but it is when you ask them to put into their own words their thoughts and their feelings, that they are presented with the greatest opportunity to deepen their understanding of themselves. In this way, writing opens a door to finding one's place in the world. And that's a door that every student deserves the opportunity to learn to open. So given this importance, why is it that students struggle so much with writing, and why is it that they're actually writing less in school now than they used to? There's actually a longer, more complicated explanation for that, but the short version is this. The hardest part of writing is not the writing. It's the thinking that seeks to, it's the thinking that the writing seeks to deliver. It is trying to figure out what it is we want to say, and then the order in which we want to say it. And for students, that it's really about getting started. It's about figuring out, how do I get started? And that's what we at Fine Tune refer to as the blank page problem. And for students, the good news is that there's a solution, which is you sit down with your teacher and you have a one-on-one conference and you talk it through. He or she asks you some questions, and eventually you clarify your ideas and you organize them, and then you're good to go. But therein lies the larger problem that we seek to solve. One-on-one conferencing is not scalable. Our Moonshot idea seeks to double the number of 8th graders who can write a persuasive essay by focusing on their thinking. And we're going to do this by developing a digital service or a plugin that combines research-backed pedagogy and AI-fueled technology to give students an experience that captures many of the same elements that they derive from that one-on-one conference with a teacher. So like a good moonshot, like the Apollo missions, we're going to do this in stages. And so first it's going to be chatbots. From there, we're ultimately going to settle on conversational AI. We're a company that has the capability to do this, deep experience in writing. We have a broad network of domain experts, and we also have experience bringing ideas to scale to millions of users. And when we do this, when we achieve this vision, every student in every school will have the opportunity to not only improve their writing, but to know themselves better. And we think that is an outcome that Professor McLeish would be very proud of. Thanks.
Wonderful. Okay, who's going to go first? I will note that we do have an AP English teacher in the house.
Bring it.
Okay, so first Kumar and then Takir.
So one question I had was, one idea people always say is, students are texting a lot. They're doing lots of this quick cycle, short writing. In a world in which students are doing lots of this kind of stuff, what do you think holds them back from taking other forms of very short cycle, putting their ideas down versus the I have to write an essay about this thing?
Yeah, we convened a teacher advisory panel this summer, teachers from all over the country, and that's really a lot of what is fueling this idea. Because what they said is that our students don't even know where to start. They do live in a world where they're very comfortable texting, but they're not so comfortable when it comes to writing a structured essay. And so part of the idea here actually is to meet them where they live. And it's to, in this case, give them a chatbot. Give them this is a domain that they're familiar with. Okay, I can do this. I got thumbs. All right, I can do this. And then that sort of greases the skids for the more structured writing to come. The idea here is that there will be an outline that emerges from this session, that this essentially brainstorming session that the student has with the technology. Once you've done that, then you're on your way.
So as an English teacher, when I saw your problem statement, I was like, yes, this speaks a lot to me. But I remember looking at the dialogue tree and feeling as though the type of questions it was asking was a little generic.
Mm-hmm.
This might be a technical question, but how do you ensure that that conversation that kids have with this AI is specific, contextualized, adaptive, especially for students with special needs, like those with disabilities or with an English language learning background?
Yeah, one of the sort of the the challenges of writing the proposal before you've actually created the technology is to be able to provide that level of depth there. But that is specifically what we're seeking to do. So I'm not standing up here and saying, okay, we're going to create AI and it's going to do this, boom, right away. Conversational AI is not there yet. It's about grounding our work in the pedagogy and then scaffolding the development of the AI so that it is as authentic as possible.
So, compelling idea, but wanted to probe with you around the fact that certain segments of the English teacher population, in particular in NCTE, are pretty deeply suspicious of technology in the writing process.
English teachers.
And particularly ones that involve AI and are potentially collecting sensitive information on young people, et cetera. Yep. So how are you thinking about tackling some of that and protecting students along the way?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question, and there is that tech is sort of can be a four-letter word for some of the some English teachers. None of my colleagues, but my former colleagues. But I think that again, the feedback that we received from the advisory panel that we worked with this summer was, we need the help at the beginning. Like, we need to just get our students started, and if there is technology that they can use to just get, grease those skids, then we're comfortable with that. So, will there be teachers out there who are resistant? Likely, but I think that we can prove the skeptics wrong, in part because we're not coming to them and saying, here, take this you have to adopt this whole idea here, soup to nuts. This is about keeping it simple, and that's, if we had more time, we could talk, but that's a hard-earned lesson, hard lesson that we've had to learn along the way, is to just keep it simple.
Okay. In my U.S. history class, I tell the students to know themselves.
Nice.
And that's one way they could see themselves in history as well. So I tell them there's a thing that we use, MSQI, Middle School Quality Initiative, which is metacognition, which means making your thinking visible. So whatever they're thinking about, I tell them to write that on paper instead of turning and talking and having that discussion and monologue. Talk on the paper and make that thinking visible. So that's one way to start it. But with the technology that you're talking about and giving them like guided questions to go along with that, how would that also work?
Well, that's the thing, is that ultimately what this is all about, this isn't about using AI to come up with the ideas. It's about using the AI to capture the students' ideas and then to codify them in this case, in an outline. So at the end of the session, let's say a student has his or her ideas are there captured on the page, and now they're ready to write.
All right, please join me in thanking Ogden. Great job. All right. All right, that concludes the first half of our presentations. We're going to take a very brief stretch break, especially for our judges, like 2 minutes. The bar is open. Folks at home, open up a beer or whatever, or cocktail. All right. And by the way, how great is it that we're here in the nation's capital at an education event actually talking about teaching and learning? Oh, my goodness, it is so refreshing. All right, see you back here in 5. Thanks.
Just what you expected? I feel like you're a bitch inward because you're like, we've actually done this before. We've actually done this before.
All right, Ulrich, my half was on top. How many good ones go? See, there's the fun. All right,
You said you weren't going to go anywhere, were you? Nice to meet you, and I was calling you back because I think we're going to bring people together. Sounds good. Folks, we're going to come together. All right. We're going to sit down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. Well, Mike just reminded me that he kept things on time, so I have to keep things on time and move things along. But we're going to start with the second round of finalists. And this next category is double the amount of high-quality feedback made by middle school students. And we're going to bring up Kareem.
Hi, everyone. Imagine you're a middle school teacher. You're trying to teach a lesson on adding fractions, but there's a problem. 6 of your students already know the content. Based on last night's homework, 8 are probably going to be lost. 2 of your students are going to have trouble following along because English is their second language, and 3 of your students require a more tactile approach to learning based on their disability. You lecture, kids are distracted, you're stuck managing behavior, and after a 30-minute battle trying to deliver the new content, you release your students to work on the assignment for the day. You have 25 minutes left in class. So you tell me, how's an educator supposed to give their students high-quality, personalized feedback in this setting? Now, most solutions designed to address this issue focus on the speed with which an educator grades or delivers that feedback to students outside of class. But few address how an educator's time during class can be used more efficiently and effectively. At the Modern Classrooms Project, we believe that the core purpose of an educator's time is to engage in data-driven discussions with students. We take the nightmare scenario I just described and replace it with a blended, self-paced, mastery-based instructional model designed to let teachers more than double the feedback they give their students. The first step is to eliminate the lecture, the biggest bottleneck in education. But unlike most edtech solutions, we see the importance of retaining teacher authenticity. We train teachers to build their own instructional videos, multiplying themselves and freeing them up to work with students for the entirety of the class period, giving them high-quality, personalized feedback. The second step is to create a self-paced structure so that students can seamlessly travel from one lesson to the next within a unit of study without needing the teacher. So much precious class time is wasted going over instructions, passing out papers, revisiting norms. In our classrooms, teachers create systems that run themselves, so they're available to work with students when and how they need it. The third and final step is to create grading policies that focus exclusively on mastery. One of the biggest reasons educators don't use feedback is because feedback has no place in their classroom. If all the students are going to travel to the next lesson the next day, regardless of their performance on the current lesson, why invest time in a useless feedback loop? In our classroom, students cannot move forward until they've shown mastery on the previous lesson. Feedback actually matters because students need it to progress. Now, I know this model works because I built it in my own classroom and implemented it in a high school math setting. I know there's demand for it because over 1.3 million people have watched our Edutopia film, and thousands of educators across the country have commented and wanting to learn more. I know it can spread because I built the Modern Classrooms Project, trained 33 teaching fellows, 10 of which are middle school educators implementing in the district as we speak. And I know it can scale because schools and districts have already started paying us for support. It's time we reframe the learning environment so feedback's at the center and not an afterthought. That's the moonshot we need.
Great. Looking to the judges here to ask some questions.
One question I would have is, often when I talk to tech vendors in the education space, they'll say, if school districts did what we outlined, our model would totally work. And often after a deployment, they'll go in and sort of interview, and they'll get, we're getting 15% of time on our model compared to what they've sort of outlined. And so I guess one question is, this is a perennial challenge, but what's your solution for, we've got this thing that you can adopt, and if you did it fully, would work, but in most instances, things don't get adopted fully.
The reason that happens is because most things are top-down. We're direct to teacher. We only take teachers that opt in. We actually take care of them. They get a $2,000 stipend for the work that they do. They get an iPad and an Apple Pencil to build their instructional videos. And then we actually visit their classrooms. I'm in their classrooms twice a month. It's actually a similar scaling model to something like Teach for America, where 15 educators have one trainer that takes care of those 15 educators, visits their classrooms, and cultivates a community and a movement around an instructional model, as opposed to a product that's pushed out to a district and folks are told to just use it. So I think we are actually using what most professional development data says we need to do, which is not be top-down, which is to have follow-through and to create an opt-in structure where not every educator has to use this model. If you're an English teacher who does a brilliant job facilitating discussion-based classrooms for the entirety of the school year, please do not do the Modern Classrooms model. We want folks that have an appetite for innovation and want to actually use our instructional model.
Okay. All right. In the classroom, so with the feedback that the students are getting to find out if they know the unit or the topic that's being discussed, how is it being assessed? Or how's the data going back to the teachers so we know that these students really understand what they learned so we can move forward?
Sure. So the kids cannot transition to the next lesson without actually showing mastery. So they have their assignment, and that can be done in a collaborative way, and they then revise that if they don't achieve full credit. And then there's a mastery check at the end of each lesson. And the mastery check is a short assessment that measures whether they've actually gotten that content correct. Now, the teachers create their own mastery checks and assignments unless they're using some type of standardized curriculum. But since the educator's not lecturing anymore, they actually spend their entire class period looking at assignments, assessing whether there needs to be a revision, and then calling that student or group of students down to tell them what they need to revise. And if it's a mastery check, they're grading that, deciding whether that student needs a reassessment, calling them down for a reteach, and then pushing them out to do a reassessment. So it's actually the fact that they're not stuck putting on a performance each day that allows them to engage with the students for the entirety of the class period.
So one thing I really appreciate about this proposal is that it focuses on teacher empowerment and training. And a lot of tech solutions kind of give resources and don't attend to that aspect.
Yes.
Can you walk me through the fellowship in terms of the training and supports that teachers give, in addition to the things that you've already mentioned?
100%. So the teachers we recruit over the spring, we take them in over the summer. We spend a full week with them, 40 hours. They get compensated for that time as well as part of the fellowship. And the training runs exactly like our classrooms. It's blended, self-paced, and mastery-based, because some teachers come in having already built an instructional video. Some have no idea how to build an instructional video. So during that time frame, the educators are crafting their first unit that they will implement on day one of school. At the conclusion of that week-long training, they get another week to then submit those units to us. We give them feedback, and then we visit their classrooms twice a month. When we conduct those visits, the first thing I do is a basic fidelity study. Are you implementing the model? Can I figure out what pace your students are at, what they're working on? Can I access your content, and how are you assessing mastery? Over time, the teachers start to tell me what they want me to look for if I deem them capable.
So is the model completely agnostic to sort of precursor teacher knowledge and skill in their subject area and whatever curriculum they're using? Or are you actually attending to the fact that not every teacher perhaps, some teachers need more support than others around curriculum and instruction?
Great question. So first of all, we're curriculum agnostic, grade level agnostic. We focus on 6 through 12 for now, but we're transitioning to the elementary level. Now, we do seek out teachers that already have existing strong content knowledge and an appetite for innovation, and we actually look for frustrated teachers. So we aren't taking in teachers that are struggling to kind of piece together the content they're teaching, because naturally they're going to have trouble building an instructional video. But my belief is there are plenty of fantastic educators across the country seeking for a progressive way to create, a personalized learning environment, and we focus on them. And what we've seen is it actually bleeds to the rest of the building. Folks start to look, they see the work that they're doing, and then ask to be a part of the program. But we do screen for content knowledge, because we've seen that can be a key factor that will stop the implementation.
Great. Please give a warm round of applause here for Kareem Farah. Wonderful. We are going to move to the next category. That is the Universal College or Career Counseling for all students before 9th grade. And Jada Batchelor from Education Open Doors.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Jada Batchelder, the founding executive director of Education Open Doors. Tonight, I ask you to picture a student in your life, a picture with hope, a student with hope and dreams, and all of the potential to be anything that they want to be. For me, I'm picturing Ivan. 9 years ago, he walked into my 8th grade science class with big dreams. Like so many of my students, he wanted an education to be successful. So he turned to someone he trusts, me, his teacher, because he had a million questions about his education. What classes should I take in high school? What's the difference between a 2-year and 4-year college? What's the SAT, and do I really have to take it? It hit me. Our education system is so complex. I certainly didn't have all of the answers. And as a first-generation college student myself from rural South Dakota, I remember navigating that uncharted path. Ivan's typical resource would be his high school guidance counselor. But in Texas, there's one counselor for every 449 students. That means Ivan will get 38 minutes of college guidance total. Imagine being a first-generation college student. Not only is that too little information, but it's coming too late. Ivan and his classmates needed a guide, teaching everything not traditionally taught in school. So I looked for one, and I realized it didn't exist. So I wrote a book and created a program teaching everything from goal setting to resumes, and I used it right alongside my science content. Seeing the overwhelming success, I founded Education Opens Doors with the goal of refining and scaling that program. And today, our program has the potential to provide high-quality college and career readiness advising to every single student in the country before they enter high school. Over the past 7 years, we have partnered with over 100 schools, training hundreds of educators with our innovative, ready-to-go curriculum. Nearly 60,000 students have received weekly content during school, equipping them with the knowledge and skills to truly understand what are my options after high school and how do I pursue them. That 38 minutes of college guidance over 4 years becomes 900 minutes in just 1 year. The Education Opens Doors program, built by teachers for teachers, consists of training and support for educators, turnkey instructional materials, an innovative and equitable student guidebook now on its 10th edition, all combined with a virtual platform to allow for fidelity, support, as well as increased access. Teachers and principals are satisfied with our program, and data shows that our model works. Our students show increases in college readiness indicators, they score higher on their state standardized exams, and they're less likely to get behavioral referrals. We have scaled successfully across urban Dallas, the 16th largest district in the country, and we have a pilot in rural Missouri. We're in public, private, and charter schools, and we meet the schools where they are: advisory course, electives, core content classes. To create access for every student in America, we know we'll have to continue to invest in technology and equip our educators who are on the front lines with these innovative resources. If you are truly looking for the moonshot in education reform, I want you to remember 3 things tonight. Our proposal is not only innovative, it's feasible. We are research-based and we're results-driven, and we have the opportunity to create access for every student in America, creating true systems-level change. It's my students like Ivan, who is now a Texas Longhorn, who inspired me to create the solution. But it's the millions of students we haven't met who deserve for us to scale it. We all know that education opens doors. Tonight, you can open more of them. Thank you.
That was great, thank you. Judges, off to the questions.
So I know you addressed this in your proposal, but can you kind of give everybody like an idea of how this is different from these other so-called programs that are like Nav Answers or whatever, they're helping kids? Like, make that distinction.
Absolutely. So when you look at other kind of college and career access programs, first of all, a lot of them are happening in high school. And so we're a middle school or an early intervention model. Secondly, a lot of them are used in out-of-school time, and research shows that students, particularly from lower-income communities, first-generation college students, really do rely on school time to teach them about college and career readiness. In addition, the example that you mentioned, like Navient, it's a technology platform specifically, where ours is being enhanced with technology, and we know that a deeper investment in technology is our path to scale, but it's also it's built on relationships. We do a lot of technical assistance support and coaching for our teachers. So it's more of a blended model than a Navient, for example. Thank you.
So really like the fact that it's anchored in middle school, where research shows that occupational identity formation really starts to happen and puts kids on a track in their own minds about where they think they should be in life. Yeah. So that's really interesting. But how do you think about the fact that you may be setting students up to think much more clearly about their paths in middle school, but then they may be heading off to a high school where they, again, are going to get less than 38 minutes of support to actually get the place they need to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, and such a problem we're trying to solve for. So to start, our program is really, the hope is that it's increasing agency, so students are able to learn to advocate for themselves. It's based on the idea of providing students with the knowledge and the information, so they're not behind with an information gap, but then they can continue to leverage the resources that are available to them in high school. In addition, a big piece of what we do, because we're in middle school, is we help students understand their options for high school and the choices they're making. So they're actually applying or hoping to enroll in a high school that is a strong fit for them in addition. Second part of your question, another thing that we're hoping to do is, we know with technology, our goal will be not necessarily to replace our in-school model, because we believe equipping teachers with this information, letting teachers have these conversations is critical, but we believe that technology will enable us to stay in touch with our students after our 1 or 2 year program, which happens in middle school, so we can continue to be a resource for them throughout high school.
One more?
I guess one question around bias. You know,
Sure.
one, career advising is one where, like, oh, I think you'd be really good at X, can lend oneself to like notions of what there's database ways to do it, but I think whether it comes to race and gender, those kind of things pop up. What's your sense for, like, obviously you want to empower educators, but what are ways that you want to both empower but also potentially combat where certain folks might be getting advised?
Such an important question. So at Education Open Source, for us, equity is a core value of ours, and we actually really intentionally 2 years ago hired a consultant to look through our materials through the lens of both a racial and gender equity I don't know how to explain it, but to basically audit all of our materials through this lens to ensure that we made a lot of changes. There was unconscious bias present because we know that that is true. And so what we've tried to do is make our materials that we train our teachers to use, that our teachers are implementing, particularly the student-facing materials, so the student workbook, which is now physical, but we hope to take digital as well. It's all been through that, and the goal is it has pictures and experiences that represent the students that we serve. It gives examples, and it's really to help students research and think about what's best for me. How do I advocate for myself so that if they do meet a counselor or a career advisor who's maybe directing them in a path that is not the right fit for them, they know more and they know their options and they know how to advocate for themselves and they have that agency.
Great. Please, and another round of applause. This was fantastic. Take that. I have a 13-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old daughter, and when I told them what I was doing this evening, they basically kind of gave me a confused look. But they really loved Project Runway, and then I explained that I was going to be the Tim Gunn of the show. So I'm going to look down a little bit more over my glasses to make sure that people are staying on time, which is what we really need to do here. And with that, next in this category, Lavanya Mohan from the Harvard Graduate School of Education.
Hello. Hi. My name is Lavanya Mohan, and with my colleague Anna Valle, I'm here to tell you about our Moonshot idea, Campus Connector, which addresses the challenge of universal college and career counseling for all students by the 9th grade. So the landscape for higher education access is fraught with misinformation and confusion, and the solutions out there are expensive, unreliable, and boring. Campus Connector is an innovative web and mobile app that matches students to college and higher ed programs that are based on what the students actually care about and their actual unique preferences. So here's how it works. A student creates a quick account, they answer 6 quick questions, and immediately they're matched with college programs and higher ed programs. Now they can also fill out a longer quiz if they want more targeted matches. They can also submit their GRE and test results so they know where they fall in the normal distribution of accepted students so they can figure out reach and safety schools. And then they look through the college matches, and in addition, and here's what makes Campus Connector a little bit more unique, they can see photos, descriptions, and videos uploaded by other students about campus life and campus visits. So how many here have teens at home? Do they listen to you? Okay, so we know that teens rely on other teens for advice. And so we want to create this peer sharing component so students can make the right choice based on fit in terms of what program is right for them. So the key to this technology is an algorithm that filters for specific preferences and student requirements. And we use these kinds of algorithms all the time to find restaurants or housing or even a date. Show of hands, how many people here use Yelp? Great. How many people use Redfin? Okay. I won't ask if you're using a dating website. We plan to use data that is based from publicly available data through iPads, as well as some private data. We also want to tap into employment data through LinkedIn, and as well as look at data and research on college access and equity. In 4 years, we hope to build the database, the algorithm, create a minimum viable product, do the beta testing, and launch the marketing campaign that would populate the social aspect of this platform. So we have the raw data. We know what the algorithm needs to look like, and we know what students really care about. We just don't have the tool to match students to their preferences. Campus Connector is that tool to address the challenge of universal college and counseling for all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Judges?
I guess my question would be just what would be your theory of traction, which is, I think anytime you have something that could be a powerful tool, and then the theory is, I think the tool would be very valuable, how would people discover it? You know, that ends up being the thing where most things fail. What's your sense on, is there some key place where folks are already going that you would want to partner with so that you get to be the preferred place that they actually use when they're looking for for advice?
Yeah, absolutely. So this tool is really designed for teens and not policy wonks like us. And so we want to go to where the teens are. So in the beta testing phase, we plan to specifically focus on one state, and we plan to integrate the ways that teens are already socializing with each other. So potentially integrating Facebook or Instagram or Twitch, wherever they are, into this app, so that uptake is already happening, because we know that's where teens are, and they're more likely to share information because they are in those spaces.
Hi. In for the high school center, for the students using the campus connector, would they be able to use that, bring it to their college advisor to have all this information prior, so now the college advisor could also use it to update the data and give them the information that they need as well? Would that help it with the college advisor as well? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, that is a really good point. A college counselor could also potentially use this app. The focus has certainly been on teens using this app. We know that the data already exists. All of that iPads data is available for us, and so we want to create this fun, user, easy to use and navigate app so that teens are using it. But yes, counselors and adults could use it as well.
Right. Question?
So one of the pitfalls in a direct-to-student model like this is that it has the potential to actually exacerbate opportunity and access gaps. I think the Khan Academy College Board practice for SAT is a good example of how those that end up using it may be the ones that already have advantaged access to information in the first place. So how will you really ensure that this is targeted at the students that are most in need of information and support that are traditionally underrepresented in higher education?
Yeah. So I think during our beta testing phase, our focus will be on students that typically have less access to higher education content and information. So in our focus on the specific state that we plan to do this beta testing, which will be Massachusetts, our focus will be on targeting students who have less access to these resources. And what that looks like is promoting this Campus Connector app on the platforms that they are, like Instagram and Twitch and Discord and so on.
Great, thanks so much. Finding teens where they are seems like an important quest, without a question. Moving on to our final category, final two contestants. Double the number of young women majoring in STEM fields. Lindsay Trupp with Immersed Games.
As a young woman, I loved math and computers. I was a tech aide in middle school. My mentor ran a computer repair shop. And as a freshman in high school, I dual enrolled in nighttime computer programming class and was the only student to have ever scored 100% on the professor's far too difficult exam. However, when it came time for me to choose a major in college, I thought about a lifetime spent fixing computers and laying Ethernet cable, which is all I knew a career in computers might be able to be. And I decided that wasn't for me because I wanted to make a difference in the world. Of course, with what I know now, that was an entirely incorrect conclusion. But these stereotypes persist, that STEM careers are solitary, uncreative, and don't make an impact. And they're a large part of the reason that young women don't choose to go into those fields. So my team is aiming to turn this around and double the number of young women majoring in STEM careers. And we're doing that by creating a social collaborative video game that will inspire women around the power of STEM and the impact it can make. And we've actually already started building this, and it's called Tidal Online. So in the game, students do things like explore a coral reef that's bleached, collecting data, conducting experiments, figuring out why and what they can do to help. Or they work with a botanist to iterate on engineering design solutions while learning genetics to solve a hunger crisis. These are powerful experiences that they can do, and we've incorporated a lot of research-based strategies showing the social impact of STEM careers, having diverse, non-stereotypical role models with the characters in the game, letting girls actually experience what STEM careers are like to build confidence, and building a community with a collaborative online game. Right now, we're being adopted directly into schools, and this is actually important as a model because this means we're not just selling a pink wash product, it's only targeting girls, which some research suggests can actually accidentally increase these negative stereotypes by signaling an inherent lack of fit. Instead, we can reach all students through schools, making sure that we have a broad group of girls included, but also other students, underrepresented minorities who have the same struggles, but also often don't have access to advanced STEM courses. Also reaching people's colleagues that are going to be part of their STEM courses and careers. And that lack of fit and sense of belonging, if we can reduce stereotypes in everyone, is another part of why girls don't choose and stay in STEM careers. We know we can scale as well because we've built Title Online to be a platform. We're using our own content authoring tool right now to add our content, but in the future we'll make this available to third parties. And this gives us 3 advantages. First, it means we can have a nearly unlimited amount of STEM content as partners build and add content. It also means that local partners can make relevant local context so that girls can see the social impact of STEM even on their local communities. And we can expand age groups to be able to serve students across many age groups where it's important. It's running out of time there. Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you so much. We still have a little bit of time for judges to ask some questions,
I'm excited
please.
about that.
Yeah, so for me, the girls in STEM issue is a lot bigger, right? And just from the proposal, I see that, I think you can see this as attractive to younger girls. And if you look at the research, already our girls are knocking it out of the park all the way up into middle school, and then they start filtering out, right? And then by high school, then forget it, post-secondary, and then forget it once they're in, postgraduate. So how is this different from any of the other programs out there that are trying to engage girls in STEM that's actually going to help them persist?
I think there's a few approaches. One is the platform piece, that we've created this to really be hands-on learning for students to see that social impact. Everything is really around solving problems, learn science, but that's more of a broad pedagogical shift that needs to take place too. As I mentioned, going into schools and classrooms as part of our delivery method is because we don't want to increase the gaps by only serving students who happen to be opting into all of these external factors. And that's why we want to have a product that will help teachers incorporate these strategies as part of their basic classroom experiences to reach students. And I agree it's much broader, and it's broader than just girls. These same problems are really impacting a lot of communities. So we're doing what we can to work in those directions, but there's a lot, including teacher training, that we're doing as well as part of that.
A lot of education games have, for lack of a better term, the stigma of being gimmicky. And especially for middle school students, getting that buy-in is really important. What is your approach to that?
Well, we actually have students do real learning and not just answer pop-up multiple choice questions. So we set a context. The way I explain it to educators is that we can set up a context with problems for students to solve using a video game. And that local piece I mentioned by having a platform is important because having, and again, to keep people's interest in middle school and high school, having this relevance. I was talking to a principal out of California recently, for instance, who I told him about how we were going to start letting them edit their own content. And he said a lot of his students' parents work picking and packaging fruit. And he wanted to be able to start customizing content so that students in science class could actually be doing engineering and science things around crop yield and droughts and how to prevent that. So making these connections as something that is real to their lives. And obviously, as I talk about this, you can tell the type of learning we do is not gimmicky at all. I fight very hard against that.
Great, please, a round of applause for Lindsay. Great, and our final contestant that we're calling up here is Ryan Torby, founder of the National Robot Library.
All right, thank you. All right. Hi, my name is Ryan Torby, and I'm the founder of the National Robot Library. The National Robot Library is an early-stage nonprofit organization designed to double the number of young females pursuing STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. Today, I'll be telling you how we plan to achieve that goal. This is the microbit. It's a physical computing device, just like a Raspberry Pi or Adafruit. Physical computing devices allow for K-12 students to see their code and to see STEM come to life. This little device is programmable, it has a thermometer, it has a light sensor, and so much more. It's packed with technology. The great thing about this and similar devices is they have a low floor. It's relatively easy for students to get started with them, but they have high ceilings. The amount of expert things that you can do with this device is immense. The National Robot Library, the plan is to take physical computing devices and provide K-12 teachers with loans of them across the United States. These loans will be combined with online professional development, and the online or teachers will be trained in two things. They'll be trained in how to use the devices that we provide, and they'll be trained in research-based best practices for engaging female students in STEM. Teachers take the training, they receive in the mail a classroom set of physical computing devices, and they use those devices across the school campus for several weeks. They then mail them back, and we do that over and over again. Now, the National Robot Library, the core of the idea came from my experience as a teacher. I was an elementary computer teacher, first on the Navajo Reservation in New Mexico through Teach for America, and then in a charter school in Austin, Texas. I truly know the power of these devices in the hands of students, the inspirational power. And I believe that any teacher can use these with a little bit of training and the right resources. The National Robot Library accomplishes two things. I think that at its core, it has identified actions of impact. We're using research-based strategies to train teachers up in engaging female students in STEM. And then I also think it does something else. It's structured to scale from the start. We can mail these kits off to all over the United States, and it's easily achievable with our online training. Overall, I think this can be a great idea to double the number of young women pursuing STEM. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Kumar?
I guess one question is, why not just run it as a giveaway?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think part of the reason that it should be a library, there's two reasons, pretty much. One is about the dead time in physical computing devices. So if you give them to schools, there's a lot of time that they sit on the shelf. So as an efficiency kind of measure, having the loan program allows us to make sure that the physical computing devices are being utilized throughout their lifetime in a maximal way. The other thing is that the core here is that we're training teachers in best practices for female STEM engagement. So if you just give them away, we're spending more money to give them away and train one teacher or train a couple of teachers than if we own the devices and we're loaning them out and training teacher after teacher after teacher after teacher.
So Ryan, I think a lot of cities like Austin are making these huge investments in libraries and public libraries.
Yep.
Why not look at transforming libraries themselves, and actually training librarians to maybe deliver and support? Because many of the kids that do go to libraries, they go there because they can't afford to buy their own books. So like even if you had this little ability for them to check this out with some support, I know it's more of a teacher thing, but why not libraries and librarians?
Yeah. So there are some libraries like the Bibliothèque in San Antonio that have digital devices and are checking out. I think for the goal of doubling female participation in STEM and graduations in STEM, that's a teacher problem. So females and young women are basically forming their identity much more in the classroom than at the library. So to impact the classroom, I feel like we need to train teachers rather than go through any other avenue.
Can I? All right. How do you ensure that whatever your mission is, the teachers or the schools that decide to use your program is going to operationalize that? How do you measure the extent to which your mission is going to be played out in the classroom, especially with regards to the gender component?
Yeah, that's hard. I think that we have plans for doing surveys before, during, and after for the teacher perspective, but I think that that really needs boots on the ground to have us go and check, spend time in classrooms, and have continuous improvement where really we're observing, we're talking to teachers, we're talking to students, and we're trying to iterate and figure out, we're not going to get it right the first time. We may get it right the 100th time in trying to build our program bit by bit and get there.
Great. Please, a round of applause for Ryan here. One thing that the CAP and Fordham team has not, I think, done enough to underscore, when we first started reading these applications, when we started lifting up some of the finalists, we were just struck again and again about the thoughtfulness, the innovation, the real potential in so many of these types of proposals. We had a hard time choosing these, and the ones that we've heard tonight, just sitting here listening to them was just again struck by the vision, the innovation, and the power of all these ideas. So now we do come to a part where we're going, though, to pick some of the winners. We're going to send our judges off into a room to score and discuss presenters. I would love for everyone to stay to find out, of course, the winners, and we will be coming back at 5:50. If that is not enough, there's also a reception at 6 o'clock. And with that, please do come back shortly, and judges, good luck.
As you can tell, there is a tough deliberation going on, but we think there's an answer coming very soon. Okay, everybody, we are going to make the big announcement in 2 minutes, so please go ahead and find a seat again. You will notice that this took longer than it was supposed to, so very interesting. I don't think we had any cameras up there, and this is how it differs from that particular show we're not allowed to mention. Thanks to the... Well, no, not that one. The one that this was modeled after with the fish, the large fish. It may be the case that one of the organizations has a lot of lawyers, and they made it clear that we weren't allowed to mention that particular show. All right. Ooh, now that I've got you excited. I got plenty of stand-up material. Let's see. Why'd the iPad go to the dentist? Anybody? Anybody? Because it had a blue tooth. Ching! My son's middle school has like a daily corny joke of the day. It's great. It's great material. Do 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 do. Oh, here they come, everybody. Please welcome back our wonderful judges. All right. I'm now going to hand it off to Kumar. Is that right? Do it together.
Well, hi, everybody. I want to thank the Fordham and CAP team for putting together an awesome event. And I want to thank all of these amazing finalists. You guys were part of an amazing group of applications. I'll say we didn't have the most time to decide, but it was like a vigorous debate where a number of the top finalists got at least one top vote. And we had an all-out debate over who should win, so much so that the two funders that were part of this group decided to up the prize purse and award two winners. Oh. So, Sarah, do you want to give the big reveal?
So, want to say congratulations to both Fine Tune and Education Open Doors. Here is your big check. So, Jada and Ogden, please come up and receive your check. Part of the reason we struggled was because the categories, secondary writing versus career pathways, really lent themselves to different kinds of solutions. And so we had a really hard time deciding which one was better and went with both.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
The judges want to say one word, one sentence about why they were excited about one of each of the ones. Sarah, do you want to go?
Michael, do you want to start? Just give a sentence or two of ideas that you were excited about, just to hear from all of you as you guys really spent so much time reading these over and deliberating.
Okay. I'm advocating mostly for my middle school students. So to have a pathway of them picking their occupation at an early age and having this as a beginning stage of their development, even though they may change in high school, as most teenagers do, but to even have a pathway and say, this is what I want to do when I get older, this is the high school I want to go to, this is the college I may want to go to, eases the minds of some parents, and they have a pathway where they want to go to do this. So that was one of my reasons why, as well as the judges, why we picked this choice as well.
So I just felt that these really hit on the equity perspective because of their ability to really hit every single child. And so I was really excited to have both my top two get funded.
So Ogden, my ELA brain and maybe my Silicon Valley brain really love this idea of investing in a tool that helps address that blank page problem. But also at the same time, Jada, I was so drawn by your commitment to equity and really investing in a broader comprehensive system of how younger kids talk about their college and career path. And so I'm really glad that we all fought it out through and then forced our funders into choosing two winners.
I think it's a wrap. Thank you.
Great. Well, again, another round of applause for our wonderful panel of judges. So I just wanted to make some very, very brief closing remarks as the thanks and handshakes begin. It was exciting to see such a thrilling competition, which produced this. More broadly than the excitement, we also just wanted to underscore the power of these types of grand challenges in public policy. They are not new. They go back to the ancient Greeks, at least to the beginning of public policy. If you read Ulysses, Homer's discusses how Penelope, needs to find a new husband, and she has a competition. So I will not ask any of our, competitors now to pull Ulysses' bow, which was what that competition was about. But as much as it really underscoring the importance and value of these types of competitions to foster innovation. Looking forward, our teams are going to be working together, looking towards the Hill, looking towards our federal government to put forth a version of this that we think will be just as exciting, grander, bigger, and with that eye towards the development of more of these types of applied development ideas that we think can have this tremendous and outsized impact.
Many thanks to Ulrich and the team at CAP. Many thanks to Olivia and Abby. Where are you guys for putting this on today? This is so much harder to do than having four boring policy wonks sit on a panel. Okay, so thank you for this. This took a lot. Thank you. And especially thank you to our judges and our finalists for doing such a great job here, preparing and presenting today and asking great questions. Tell your friends, family, colleagues, everybody you know that this will be online and they can watch it. They should watch it and to check out. We will do what we can to, with permission from the finalists, get some version of their proposals up online so everybody can see them. And stay tuned for more on this front, on R&D. Thanks so much for coming. Enjoy the rest of the reception. Get a drink.